All right, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to go ahead and do the, let's say this calculate button. So if this wasn't necessarily calculate, but if we called it something like add to database, okay, and let's get rid of the calculator. If we just do add to database, okay, it will put it down here, and then when we click the calculate button, it will load this label. That'll probably be the easiest thing. So over here where it says calculate, that's perfectly fine. Leave it as calculate. But let's move all of this output stuff. Let's move it to a new file. So we're going to come up here and we're going to add a module. Remember, a module is a lot like a library, but we're going to build it ourselves. So we're going to call this module functions. And we're just going to create a new function in here, like so. And for right now, let's just assume that this is all just we'll need to create this function code for right now. But we come back over here. If we want to use that, then we need to make sure we do an import, right? So we come up here and we say from, and then dot, and well, we don't want that one. Sorry, we go from dot. And then we'll say import functions, okay? And I always like to kind of add like F or func on the end. And that way, if I ever need it, I can just reference this function, okay? And we'll want to do that also here for future grid and the reason why we're doing this is that we can use the same code from both sides, right? From both forms. So we'll do it here from, and then just if I hit tab, so let me hit dot. And I want this one with the 3 dots, okay, which is why it's important because I'm actually if you remember back to the Linux class, you're further down in the directory structure, so you need to go up more, and then again as func there, okay. So let's build that function. So if I come over here, I'm going to say define, and this function, let's just call it calculate. Or calc future value, and let's pass in a transaction ID, something like that, okay? And let us finish that with a colon, okay? And at the end of the day, we're going to return the let's just do return future value. So it'll return the whole future value. Okay. All right. So that's good for right now. We actually probably need to pass in more than just a tran ID. But for now, well, I guess we don't really need to do that because we'll be able to because we're going to get this out of the database. So let's get it out of the database. So if we come over here, we could say, to get it out of the database, the first one we want to call it is, we'll get deposits. Okay, that's this one here. Okay, so let's copy that. Deposits is equal to app table dot future amount dot get by ID, and that's why we passed in the ID, and then user ID, or sorry, tran ID. Okay, and what column is it? It's going to be the deposit column, like so. And then we'll do that thing again. We'll do it for interest rate. So int rate equals app table future get by ID, trans ID, and then which one do we want? Interest rate. Click that one, and we'll do that again. So we're going to grab all 4 of these out of the actual database. Okay, start amount is equal to app table dot future amount dot get by ID, and we're passing in the trans ID, and we're going to get what part of that, and that's going to be the starting amount. And then the final one we're going to get is let's see, 1, 2, got future value, start amount, period count. So period count is equal to app table, future amount, get by ID, trans ID, and then future amount. No, period count, number of periods. Okay. And that will go through the whole thing that we actually got working. Okay. Work. It returns out the future value. Okay. We probably also want to return out the interest earned. Okay. Here. So we got future value and interest earned. Okay. And maybe to make it easy, we also want to send back out the starting amount. So we can get all three of those things out. Back out. So when we go to call it here, or actually up here, all we're going to do here is just upload it to the database. So let's take a look here, and we want to just add this. So let's just do a little comment, add to database, and I call it database. We can also call it a data table. It's much simpler than a database, but it's just going to simply be app tables dot future amount dot add row. Okay. And then in the add row, it's going to be interest rate is equal to up here, int rate. Okay. So int rate. And then we just simply do a comma. And I'm actually going to put on the next row. It's not, the next one would be, let's see. So we have interest rate, probably starting amount is equal to start amount. And then, so we have periodic deposit is equal to deposit. And then let's just look. So we have interest rate, starting amount, periodic deposit. The last one would be period count, which we called it number of periods is equal to period count. All right, so let's put these also on their own line, like so. Bring this back nice and clean. Okay, so I have my four things going in. And once we do that, we need to reload the panel or the repeating panel. Okay, and again, that's the same thing that we did up here. Okay, so we can just copy that, paste it right down here. That backed up a little bit. Very nice. And then the last thing we need to do is just clear out those text boxes. So let's just do self dot. Let's just copy those text boxes there. And here we go, something like that. Which reminds me, we do not want to pass in to these. We do not want to pass those in as we want to make sure we pass them in as strings, even though we're getting them as whatever, floats or whatever. So we can do it one of two ways. We can either just grab it, but this one here, we're actually doing a calculation as we're getting it. We're converting it back to a decimal and making it a monthly interest rate. So this interest rate, all we have to do here for interest rate is, that's this one here. It's just convert it to a string before we send it in to the data table. Because remember, everything was in text doc, was in a doc. And then on these other ones, why don't we just copy this, put it in our function, and then go back to here and then just get rid of, we'll just bring them in as strings, like so. And the only one that we don't want to bring in as a string is is that interest rate because we want to do that little calculation on it as we get started. Okay, and then we'll just, right here, we just convert it over to a text. So let's see if this will work. Let's see if this add button will work. So when we click run, okay, we have this showing up here. Let's say number of periods is 4, starting amount is 3,000, interest rate is 0.06, and let's put $50 in a month, add it to the database, and then it loads up down here. And then here we've got this crazy 5e minus, I mean, that's obviously, if we go back and look at it in our data table, clearly this is not going in as the correct string. So we'll need to fix that. We'll need to fix that real quick. So if we go back over to our home, we're taking this in as a float. I think what the problem was when we click run, it just needs to be as a percent. So interest rate per month. So if, let's do it again, for 3,000, let's say 6%, and see how we have this percent sign here. And then the deposit is 50, and we click add to database. Then it shows up here as 0.005. So again, I still think we're wrong. I still think we need to do a little bit of work on that, but at least it's being stored correctly. And then this one here is obviously not right, so we can just delete that whole one. So besides the figuring out this formula part, the idea is that's how easy it is to add to the data table. And then the last thing we need to do is just output this answer right here by sending these 4 things into this calculation button. Okay. And that will be in the next video.